So, how much super do you really need in retirement in Australia? There's no single answer, but in this video, we'll show you how to calculate your own. So, we'll go through setting a retirement or realistic retirement budget through to planning for longevity. In the video here, we'll cover everything you need to know. So, stick around. We'll go through the 5 key factors that can help turn your retirement dream into reality. My name is Daniel Thompson. I'm a financial advisor and the founder of New Era Financial Planning. So as I mentioned, with today's video, it will be around retirement and how you can use your superannuation to help manifest your dream retirement. Before we go through the specifics and some tailored information for you to work out your number, I do want to go through the sort of numbers you might see bandied around the place, which is a bit more generalisation. So there's a group called the Association of Superannuation Funds Australia, or ASFA for short. They crunch the numbers essentially, and each year or so update figures based on current sort of lifestyle and living expenses and inflation with what they believe as a general idea people, both from either individuals or couples, need to retire comfortably in Australia. So the numbers at the moment, as of sort of now in 2024, are for individuals to live a comfortable, what they call a comfortable retirement. So this is home paid off, being able to cover all your bills and expenses, eat out, travel, and live what people would term a comfortable retirement. It's a touch under $52,000 a year, so $51,630 dollars per year in after-tax income. For a couple, it's a little bit higher, so a little under 73,000, so specifically 72,633 in annual income for a couple to achieve that comfortable retirement. In terms of the amount of super that ASFA say is needed for that, it's 595,000 for individuals and 690,000 for couples. So these are based on people retiring at 67, living roughly to life expectancy, so mid to late 80s, and being able to access the age pension, as well as I mentioned, having a home paid off. So in reality, and these are generalizations, the balances don't need to be huge to achieve a comfortable retirement. What we tend to find, though, is those numbers mean you're drawing down on your super over time and you are reliant on the age pension, which is okay, but it does mean that you do sort of have to factor those in. What I'll go through are the sort of 5 key things to think about to plan for your retirement, and then I'll run through an example at the end, bringing it all together and looking at an ideal outcome where you plan to live longer, retire earlier, and never run out of money, essentially. And it does lead to a bigger figure, but that's where we can then look at in the future ways to achieve that. So let's jump into it. Taking that generalization or generalized numbers to more specific for you, there's 5 things you need to consider and factor in. First one is working out your current budget and expenses, and I'll link to our budget at the bottom of this video. So, and this is what we go through with members. So you've got a sort of a members only budget here that you can pop in all your current expenses. So when we look at planning for retirement, I should say, with the budget, there's a few things to keep in mind. One is just base it on today and current expenses. Say you're 40 or 50 and you want to retire in 20 years time, or 10 or 20 years time, the expenses then are going to be different than today because of inflation. Don't worry about that right now. We want to keep things simple. Just base it on today. Factor in your current expenses. Take out or leave out the things that won't be applicable in retirement. So specifically mortgage, and I'll go through that a little bit later. And kids' expenses and education, if assuming that's not going to be applicable, and anything else that won't be applicable in retirement. And add in or increase things that will be more applicable. So the big one here is usually travel and holidays. You might spend or factor in $10,000 a year now, for example, but you want to double that in retirement. So factor that into the budget. That'll give you your specific number. So previously when I said the roughly 52,000 for individuals and 72,500-ish for couples, this will give you your specific number. And it might be more than that, it might be less than that, it might be around about the mark, but it'll give you your specific income requirement, the expenses that you want to cover, and then the income requirement to meet that. You can add a little buffer if you want. We generally like a 5% buffer for unexpected things. So if your total expenses are 50,000, we usually add $2,500 on top of that just to factor that in, and you've got a bit of a room for error as well. So the second thing is decide the ideal age you want to retire. And I say ideal because although you might think you have to, not going to be able to retire to 65 or 70, as financial advisors, we want to plan for ideal and look at ways and strategies to achieve that. And if ideal is 55 and it's not achievable, it might be that you can get to 58 or 60 versus thinking, hey, I might need 65 or 70. So even if it's the ideal is not quite achievable, you almost always end up in a better position than you would have otherwise. So based it on ideal, and keeping in mind with this, the earlier you retire, the more you're going to need, because the longer your money needs to last and the further it needs to stretch. So retiring at 60, let's say you might live to 90, you've got 30 years of retirement versus retiring at 70 and living to 90 and having, say, 20 years for that money to last. So all else equal, the earlier you retire, the more you're going to need, because it is going to need to last longer. And at the moment, age pension doesn't kick in until you're 67. So if you are wanting to sort of factor that in, that won't be applicable to 67. So retiring earlier than that means you're going to be fully funding your lifestyle and retirement until potentially being able to access that if eligible. So the third key thing to factor in is the other end of that longevity spectrum is, and this is a little bit contentious, and I don't think a lot of or enough people talk about it, is what's your health like, and do you have a family history of what we call longevity? So do you have parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts who live longer than the average? If so, it's worthwhile factoring that in, because you don't want to just factor in your life expectancy or the average life expectancy and find that you're going to run out of money 10 years early. What we do as a general rule here is add 10 years to the average life expectancy. So we want to be pretty conservative and make sure that the funds, people's retirement money and funds last till at least mid to late 90s. So right now the average life expectancy is sort of mid to late 80s, but we want to add a decade onto that to make sure that there's no issue of people running out of money. So again, that does mean you also want a higher balance because it does need to last longer. The fourth key thing is, again, maybe a little bit of a contentious one, and this is more of coming into our money philosophy here at New Era, is owning your home. There are a lot of research and sort of statistics coming out now. In Australia, it's very hard to retire comfortably without owning your home. Having a mortgage, and even worse, renting, the system's not built to provide those people a comfortable retirement. The extra sort of amount you get in Centrelink, the rent assistance, or the extra amount you're allowed to have in assets as a non-homeowner isn't enough to cover the current amount of rent that is required these days to sort of rent a place for the long term. So that's a big factor. The second one with that is, in terms of owning a home, you have that peace of mind and the comfort that you've got your place. You've got a home for you, your family, that nothing essentially will ever happen to. You don't have to worry about rent increases, a property being sold, owners wanting to move back in and you having to look somewhere else and going through that rigmarole, essentially. So we factor in owning your home as a key pillar of your financial plan and retirement plan, even if it does mean having a slightly lower sort of super balance or retirement funds in the end. Owning your home is for us as important as the rest. So that's the fourth key pillar is factoring in owning your home and making sure that you will be able to pay that down at retirement, or potentially pushing that retirement date back a little bit to line up to when you're going to be able to pay off that mortgage. The fifth key factor is the investment return to factor in for your super in retirement. So when you're younger and working and growing the money, we want to be more aggressive and ambitious with our investments. We want it to earn more and let the magic of compounding take over and grow. And it's sort of, I'll explain in another video, I call it the snowball effect. So it sort of starts, it may start slow, but it's like a snowball rolling downhill. The longer it is, the bigger it gets and the faster it becomes. And you find that after 5, 10, 20 years, the growth is quite fantastic. When we get to retirement or leading up and in retirement, we want to temper that a little bit. We want to be a bit more moderate and conservative in retirement. So we don't want to aim for the sort of gung-ho double-digit returns or even 8 or 9% returns. We factor in a 5%, we call this about 5% rule, what we call net return, so after fees and taxes. In retirement, you can set your funds up to be largely, if not fully, tax-free. So the 5% sort of after super fees and any other costs. So if we use that as a pretty conservative and moderate type of return, it means you don't have to be ultra aggressive and you don't have to withstand or the fluctuations and those high fluctuations that can come with markets when there's sort of rockiness and drops. So as an example, recapping those 5 things, I'll go through something a little bit more ambitious and ideal outcome, using, say, myself and us, my family as an example. We're late 30s, 40 at the moment. Say we want to retire in 20 years at 60 with an income of, we've done our budget and it works out with a bit of buffer at, say, 85,000 in today's dollars, assuming the mortgage is paid off, our daughter's sort of grown up, no school fees, anything like that. So if we assume a 5% as a net rate of return, or the investment returns from the super in retirement of 5%, that 85,000 would need $1.7 million in, let's call it retirement funds. In this case, we'll talk super, but there's other ways to build that, which we'll talk about separately. We need $1.7 million in retirement funds to very comfortably fund that 85,000 a year. And the reason that is so high is 2 parts. A, that's for a couple, retiring early and adding in that longevity. So we're looking at needing that to last 35 plus years. But the second and big part of that is, and why we want to plan for the ideal outcome, is that 1.7 million, achieving the 5% returns, assumes you just draw down the 85,000 each year, which is the income and returns from it, not accessing the capital. So you may need to here and there, but the idea is, in theory, if that capital or the balance, that 1.7 million, isn't accessed, it will last you forever. So that's a 35 or 40 years that this needs to last us. In reality, we'll be very comfortable, and in theory, potentially can last longer than that, and theoretically almost forever, because that 1.7, let's not factor in inflation or anything like that at the moment, that will generate on average over time 5% and $85,000 each year, which is what is used to fund the expenses and travel and everything like that. So for people, it is a bigger number than the ASFA numbers. For people that are more than 15 years out from retirement, I think that sort of outcome is very achievable. For people that are within that, and especially within 10 years, it might be things like working a bit longer, retiring a bit later, having a little bit less of an income, factoring in the age pension and those type of things. So there's that's where it becomes very important to go through those 5 factors and do your own numbers and find out your own figure. If there's any way that I can help, or you wanted to have a chat, please reach out and we can tee up a time, or we can go through your numbers and what they look like and how you might be able to achieve them.